Welcome back to the Remembering Podcast, where we gather together, breath by breath, story by story, to piece ourselves back together. I'm Martina, and today's episode is for the ones whose spark has gone quiet, the ones who once created with joy or play or fire, but now feel like they've been walking through fog. If that's you, and I know it's sometimes me, I want to offer you a candle today. A little warmth, a little permission, a reminder. Your fire is sacred, and it's still here. This month on Remembering, we've been walking a path of transformation. We began with starting over, then descended into myth with Inanna, and reclaiming ourselves after loss. Last week we spoke the truth aloud with I Am, guided by the fierce and strange tale of the unconventional princess Tatterhood. And now, in this chapter, we ask, what do we do with what we've reclaimed? How do we breathe life into it? How do we let our creativity return, even if it's just a tiny spark? Because creativity isn't just about being a painter or a writer or a performer. At its essence, it's about being alive, about having a connection to something bigger to yourself, whatever you want to call it, whether that's God, the universe, source, and listening to what moves through you when you listen to it. Letting your soul make beauty in the smallest ways, even if no one but you ever sees it. And you know what? Even if you are the only person who ever sees it, you're worth enough for beauty to take time to give itself an audience of one. And the act of creating things, right? Whether that's engaging in a creative art or even just creating a life you love, is so worth it. And it's worth devoting your time to. In Irish mythology, there's a goddess named Brigid. Brigid is the patron of poets, midwives, blacksmiths, and sacred wells. She's a fire goddess who was syncretized into a Catholic saint. But her flame isn't only about heat or destruction. It's creative fire, the kind that warms and heals and inspires. Brigid watches over the hearth and over our health. She's a healing goddess. And there is a definite connection between creativity and healing that I think doesn't get talked about enough. The act of creating things, of expressing ourselves, is healing to the spirit. And it's something I think that makes our home and our environment and our inner life so much better. So it feels really natural to me for one goddess to embody qualities of healing, creativity, and watching over the hearth, right? The hearth is the sacred center of the home. And just like the hearth is the sacred center of the home, there's also a sacred center to us that includes our creative life force. And so she's the one who tends to that as well. But it's a spark that can dim in grief, in burnout, in silence, in caregiving. I know for me, when I was caring for my mom, I had been someone who did a lot of writing and playing around, even though I'm not great at some of it, with other creative mediums just because it was fun. Writing is kind of my thing that I know I'm good at, and so I naturally keep coming back to it. And I used to write a lot as a way to use my imagination and even just to express myself. But as I was caring for my mom, often I was just so tired and burned out and grieving and exhausted that when I did have a few minutes to myself, they usually ended up with me, taking a nap at best, or at worst, curled in the fetal position, feeling completely overwhelmed. And I'm laughing because it's uncomfortable to say that, but it's actually true. I did spend time like that sometimes. And in those times, I felt alone. I felt so alone. And maybe that's something you've felt too. And yet, even when we feel alone and like our spark has burned out, that essence of Bridget, that archetype, the qualities she embodies, they never leave us. And even when we forget, she remembers for us. Sometimes I can imagine her sitting quietly beside me when I feel lost, not rushing me, not judging, just tending the coals of my spirit, saying, "Don't worry, your fire is still here. You don't have to do everything at once. Just do something. Let's coax it gently." And the interesting thing about creativity and creative expression is that it's one of those things that we sometimes feel like we have to be inspired to do. Yet the more we do it, the more it inspires us to want to do more. And the more inspired we feel, the more alive we feel, and the more a part of life we feel. So today, we call on Bridget and ask her to help us reawaken that spark. So often, we don't create because we think we have to be good at it. Or we're too tired. Or like I was talking about a moment ago, we're grieving. Or the day is full of laundry, dishes, caregiving, bills, whatever it might be. And even worse, often we don't do it because we've been told that making beauty isn't practical, that it doesn't matter. And that's an attitude that we learn. You know, we each come onto this planet as little babies and little kids with such a sense of curiosity and desire to explore and create things and play and infuse our creativity with play. And somewhere along and we don't worry about being good enough or any of that stuff. We just worry about expressing ourselves and doing things because they're fun. And somewhere along the line, we start attaching value judgments to things, or we tell ourselves that as we grow older, it's time to put away foolish things and that creativity and play are foolish. We start to say that it doesn't matter. But I want to tell you something. It does. It matters if you write a single line of poetry in your notes app. It matters if you hum a tune while chopping vegetables. It matters if you arrange stones in a spiral or make tea like a ceremony or plate your dinner so it's not only delicious but beautiful looking. Because these small acts, they're not just frivolous. They are prayers. They are rituals. They make us feel more alive. And they are resistance to the dimming of the light within us. They are a sacred attempt to reignite that inner spark that life sometimes snuffs out. And so in doing them, we actually find ourselves feeling more connected. You know, there's a fairy tale related to reigniting a spark that I really love. It's an old Slavic story of a girl named Vasilisa. Now, like most fairy tale heroines, Vasilisa's mother is long gone, missing, has died. And so when she passes away, Vasilisa's father remarries pretty much the most horrible woman he can find. And it's a story that has a lot of similarities to Cinderella and the cruel stepmother in that story. Vasilisa's stepmother even has two nasty daughters who treat Vasilisa really poorly too. And one particularly cold winter, they find that they're having trouble keeping their hearth fire lit. And the mother gets the idea, or stepmother I should say, that this may be the way to finally get rid of Vasilisa. And she comes up with a plot to send Vasilisa into the forest where the fearsome witch Baba Yaga has her hut, and ask her for a spark of flame to rekindle the family's dying hearth fire. And she sends Vasilisa off, expecting that she will never come back again after encountering the wicked witch in the forest. And so Vasilisa sets out in the dark night with only a magical doll, a gift from her real mother, who before she passed away told her to feed it and listen for its whispers whenever she feels lonely, afraid, or uncertain. In the woods, Vasilisa is alone, it's dark, it's scary. She doesn't think that she'll be able to make it. She questions her own fortitude and ability. But by listening to that quiet inner voice, the doll's guidance, she survives. And she doesn't fight or force. She follows small steps. She overcomes every obstacle she encounters along the way until she finally reaches this crazy-looking hut of the fearsome Baba Yaga. And the hut is not only deep in the forest where most people fear to go, but it stands on chicken legs and dances and moves around. So it's difficult to find, even if you think you know where it is or if you think you found it before. This kind of mischievous, spirited building thwarts people from finding it. So already just making her way to the hut and finding the witch is kind of a trial of its own. And so, despite her reputation for killing and eating those who find their way to her home, for some reason the crone agrees to give Vasilisa the fire she seeks. But only if she agrees to work for her and complete a series of seemingly impossible tasks first. And this requirement is clearly an initiation of sorts. And so, with the advice of her doll, the girl ends up completing each task with diligence and grace, and it impresses the old witch. In the end, Baba Yaga sends Vasilisa home with a skull lit within by flame, representative of her own wisdom, power, and light, which are now awakened. But this is no ordinary fire. When Vasilisa returns to her family, the skull's gaze sets fire to the home. Her stepmother and stepsisters, who had tried to extinguish her spirit, in the way of fairy tales, are punished, and they end up being consumed by its flames, and they perish in the fire, which is not just literally a punishment for their wicked deeds, but it's also symbolically a transformation for Vasilisa, because it's the burning away of falsehood, cruelty, control, those voices that tell you you can't or you shouldn't, when you can and maybe should. And this happens because Vasilisa has changed. She no longer needs to shrink to survive. She carries the fire now, her own fire. She is the fire. And that's what we do when we reclaim our creativity. Hopefully no one gets burned to a crisp in the process. But when we engage in that act, we don't bulldoze through it. We go gently. And with each step, we start to believe more deeply in ourselves. And as we walk down that road, we find ourselves feeling more confident. We feed the doll in our pocket, first a little, and then more and more and more. And suddenly we find that we've carried our skull light home. So you might be wondering, after all of this, how do you reawaken that creative spark when it feels like it's dimmed, or maybe even when it feels like you've never fully lit it in the first place? So I wanted you to have a few soft, sacred ways to begin. And the first one is small acts of beauty. It doesn't take a lot. Light a candle, Stir herbs into a pot. Arrange feathers on your windowsill. Do whatever creative, beautifying act your spirit leads you to. This is creation, and it is enough. The second thing is sacred play. Think about, what did you love before the world told you who to be? Was it finger painting? Was it making mud pies? Was it dancing badly? Was it singing poorly? It doesn't matter. If you think you're good or bad at it, get rid of those ideas and just do. Play anyway. And the more you play, the less you worry. You'll find the better you get at it. And even if you don't ever become, a brilliant artist, who cares? As long as you had fun doing it along the way, that is enough. The third way is voice and movement. Sing, even if it's just a hum. Move without purpose. Let your body create rhythm without explanation. I found, as I've been going through my own journey with kind of grief and trying to reintegrate in life, and how that process sometimes feels like you're moving forward and things are good, and then something will happen and remind you, or something bad will happen, and suddenly you find yourself taking steps back. And I found in those times that just listening to music, having music on in my home, and dancing in my living room alone, or singing along, or really using music to curate my mood if I'm feeling down, listen to something that lifts my spirits, or if I need to get out my emotions that are pent up, listen to something sad that makes me cry and know when to turn it off to and go back to the happy. But in singing and moving, we express ourselves and we let our emotions out. And that's a beautiful act of creativity, right? Because metabolizing your emotions is healthy. It's how we end up alchemizing them and overcoming parts. And then the fourth thing is create an altar for your spark. Choose a spot. It can be a shelf, a drawer, a windowsill. Add a candle, a stone, a flower, and let it grow. Start adding anything that's meaningful and beautiful and soothes your spirit to it. And let it reflect your spirit back to you. There are a million ways that you can embrace your creativity, but even if you start with just one of these four things, I promise you that it will ignite something in you. It may not happen overnight, but if you keep at it, it will happen. And so I did not have time this week to create a journaling PDF, and I am looking at a way to do it that's not having to build a tiny publication each week. So while I figure that out, I wanted to share with you some journaling prompts. And you might want to pause and write them down, or you can just let them settle into your heart or work with them in whatever way you want. But here are some questions you may want to meditate on or write about or just think about. What lit me up before the world told me what was useful? What kind of beauty is my soul hungry for now? What would I create even if no one ever saw it? If Bridget were sitting beside me today, what would she whisper to my heart? What advice would she give me? And so let's end with a simple act of remembering. If you're able, light a candle now or later this week. Place your hands on your heart and whisper aloud or silently in your soul, Bridget of the flame, tend my spark. Vasilisa of the forest, guide my steps. I remember the light within me. And while you're remembering things, remember, you don't have to blaze, you only have to glow. Thank you for being here today and for tending your spark, even if it feels small. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love for you to share it with a friend or tag me on Instagram or Facebook so I can witness your beauty. Until that time, stay soft, stay sacred, and stay lit in your own quiet, powerful way.